Okay, hello guys. My name is Felipe Pires. I'm a member of the core team at Red Team Village, primarily director of the sponsors. In the other words, I'm responsible for helping our sponsors and talking about our village. And I'm a pleasure to have you guys on board for another year. Thank you so much for supporting our village. Thank you for being here. And Jason, please introduce yourself and describe what you do at Flare.
Absolutely. My name is Jason Haddix. I am the field CISO at Flare. So I help Flare with a bunch of customer and marketing focused stuff, as well as some security advice every once in a while. And then I'm also kind of the resident expert on red teaming when it, kind of meets their platform of providing, this CTEM type data and this exposure management type data. I got hooked up with Flare when I was doing full-time red teaming at a previous company of a friend of mine, and we started to do a lot of research on how our methodology stacked up against other kind of big red team companies. And what we
Mhm.
found was that not a lot of people were using exposure data in their red team campaigns, and so this was a year ago, or a year and a half ago. Since then, almost every consultancy I know has now started subscribing to some exposure management platform to get those credentials that are leaked in Telegram, through Stealer log campaigns and stuff like that, and Stealer log malware. So that's how I met up with Flare, and they just ended up being a great company. So I work with them part time, as well as I run my own company, which I still do red teaming through that company, which is called Arcanum. I'm full plugged into that red team life, and I work with Flare to help them however I can, and that's kind of how we got together.
Oh, sounds good. Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So, one simple questions about the talking about the red team. So, how the red team is impacting Flare, and how the Flare can impact the industry on the sector when you combine those topics about the red team. In fact,
Yeah. Yeah, I think that as a campaign leader, like an ops leader for, my own red teams at Arcanum, and then before when I was working at the last company, um, we had to go beyond kind of the normal service standard of just, doing, probably like a number of phishing campaigns and spear fishes and using
hmm
evil jinx and stuff like that. And so we started to incorporate a lot of the CTEM data, which was really the most fresh data is usually the data from Stealer logs that come from Telegram
hmm
channels that the bad guys are in selling. And it involves acquiring those, usually the free dumps of the Stealer log data, and looking for your client's email domain in the cookie list as an email, or as part of the domains that they sign into via the corporate URL, usually a Microsoft login or something like that. And so that was kind of how we started and like getting into it. And so shortly after, I think we started talking about it, a bunch of other firms followed suit. Because we were very vocal about how well it was working for us. I think in the early days, eight, maybe 8 out of 10 campaigns in a year, part of the initial access vector was these credentials that we were
hmm
finding. And so now that has tapered off a little bit because of access issues. But the reason that I went with Flare when I was independent was the teams that garner the dark web, kind of data, right? Like I don't have that time. I don't have a research team. I didn't at my
hmm
old place, and I definitely don't now. I don't have that time to build the infrastructure of a credential leak database and automation. That's development time that I would need to invest into putting into, like, monitoring the Telegram channels, dumping everything, normalizing all the data, checking for freshness, checking for if it's going to
hmm
work on the Microsoft portals or whatever. And so, like now, like almost like, I would say 4/5 of that work gets done by Flare, and I just ingest the feed and use the creds if I need to against my client. And then Flare has offered a bunch of new features in order to, on the defensive side of this, kind of the C10 data, to auto rotate or help customers remediate the leaked creds, which now I offer through my service, and people are like, oh,
hmm
that's a crazy value add. So So yeah, so that's kind of like, the CTEM stuff. I think in general, I think that there is, a lot more to be said about like the research that Flare releases, and on kind of like the tactics of the
Hmm.
threat actors that are getting the Stealer malware installed on people's devices. We try to mimic as many threat actors as we can for our customers when we do more purple teaming style engagements where they want us to emulate instead of do our own methodology. And
Hmm.
so I use Flare threat reports for that kind of stuff. And yeah, so all over the place, really. Yeah.
No, that's amazing. And it's coming to me like topics about the red team, purple team, and many things about that. And so, how this is changed for Flare when you talk more about like the very I'm not I'm not saying like complex, but like sometimes the people are talking about the pen testing or the penetration testing and the red teaming. So this is a kind
Yeah.
of misconception here.
Yeah.
So first, I think it's very nice based on your experience. Can you clarify those difference and that
Yeah.
how those type of things are changing for Flare, for example, in terms of those like and how this affect your perception about the red team practice or the real like emulation things or
Mhm.
simulation thing, let's say. So
Yeah.
what is your thoughts about that and how you can explain more for the
Yeah.
audience?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people enter into the scene of offensive
Mm-hmm.
security as like, usually they start off as like a vulnerability assessment person, and then they
Mm-hmm.
graduate to a pen tester, which pen tester scope is to usually assess a certain type of technology. And you can have goal-oriented pen testing, or you can have just kind of methodology-based pen testing. But usually those are fairly well scoped to technical issues in an application or a network or something like that. Red teaming includes domains that are usually not included in pen testing, which includes things like phishing, physical access.
Mm-hmm.
So you things like lock picking, USB key drops, shoulder surfing, dumpster diving, stealing shred bins. Those are the classics that you do on the physical side, and then the social side is phishing, SMS phishing, spear phishing, where we're using tools like Evil Engine X, and then you have subcategories in phishing, which is file-based phishing, where you're attaching files and you hope that the user will open an executable or some kind of file. And then you have man in the middle cred capture, which is primarily the one used today by most red teams using things like Evil Jinx. And so like it is a graduation. There's also a lot more. I would say there's a lot more technicality in the red team world because there's a little bit of development and reverse engineering mixed into the skill sets. I think that many red teams these days, you have to choose a command and control infrastructure for your campaign. Um, and that means like once you do that fish, or once that user opens up that executable, or however you get your initial access, we call it. After initial access, you have to get persistence, and then you have to pivot around the network, all while not getting caught by like email protection software, network protection software, the entire
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft suite, which has so many like security functions now. And so there is a lot of research and development that happens in red teams about how to fly under the radars of those tech. And so that is a new skill set that when you transition from pen tester to red teamer, you have to learn. And you may not have even have been exposed to like a command and control server like Cobalt Strike or Mythic or Sliver or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, right? And so you have to learn these programs. You have to understand how to evade EDR and antivirus and stuff like that. And that requires some development. I think that that development experience isn't always present on pen testing usually, and that multi-stage initial access process um, is not usually in the purview of pen testing. And so you'll learn how to do pen testing, you'll learn how to do exploitation in a silo, but then you have to kind of put it together when you transition into full-time red teaming. And so that's kind of what you want to look for. That's kind of the journey that you'll go through when kind of in the offensive security scene.
That's interesting that many things that are saying, and I was remember that some like job opportunity that I saw on the social medias, and one of the recruiters actually are requesting this job for a junior red teamer. So I was wondering junior red teamer, like the red teamer, then you need to have like the experience to be,
Yeah,
the red teamer. So how can be junior if you work with the red team? So
yeah,
that's interesting part, right? I think it's a kind of another misconception for
yeah.
the talent acquisition team. So maybe you are seeing something similar, right?
I think that, when they put I mean, a lot of people throw around the term red team very uh easily, or like as a misclassification, at least in job
Hmm.
roles, right? Like there's nothing wrong with having your title be a pen tester, or a security engineer or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Um but I remember when I worked at a place before, the pen testers, and primarily their job was pen testing. They like almost rioted because we wouldn't give them the title red team. Like we wouldn't call them the red team or whatever. And I had misgivings about it, but like at some point I had to acquiesce, right? I had to be like, okay, like we'll call you the red team, like whatever. Like, like just like let's just get the work done. But they weren't doing very many red team engagements, like full scope. And so yeah, there is definitely differences, and you do
Hmm.
have pen test teams who do include some extra components sometimes, or they do things like goal-based pen testing where the scope is wider. um, but I usually, usually when I'm exposed to like red teaming, a junior red team role, to me might be someone who has been in pen testing for 10 years already, and now is just transitioning into those development skill sets, or using these extra tools, and working on a team is also a big part of it. So red team engagements usually involve anywhere from
Yep.
3 to 5 people. They're all specialists in different things: the social side, the tech side. Sometimes you have delineations in the tech side. Someone, you have a specialist who's really good at internals, or you have a specialist who's really good at web, because you're gonna, your initial access could come from anywhere, right? It could come from a
Yep.
fish, or it could come from a web exploit. You don't know. Um, and then you have your developer, your tools developer, or your
Hmm.
capabilities developer, and they're the ones who, like, if you're up against a custom network or a custom piece of software, they're the real development muscle that's going to help you build your initial access payload, or bypass a certain EDR, or make a change to your C2 that's open source and you need some new feature or something like that. And so that's the other change too, is working with a team, I think.
Hmm.
Because I've been in plenty solo pen tests, right? Like those come all the time where it's just you and a web app, or you and a network, right? But on a red team, it is working with the team as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it's come to me like the everyone that would like to work with the red team, they should, respect the journey and to get there.
Yeah,
Just respect the journey. So
yeah.
cool. So and what about what is the security vision of Flare in terms of where you think where it does see or leading, or how does see itself shifting the industry about this technology, or thinking about the how the threat works, thinks, the attackers, how the threat actor thinking. So what is the security vision of Flare?
Yeah, I think Flair's always been a super, like, very focused company when it came to having this vision of exposure data, specifically credentials and cookies on the dark web, and trying to
Hmm.
make people safer, right? So, like most of the development cycles in product features you know, have become exposing that data in a way that makes it easier for customers to remediate, like auto remediation, and easier ways to consume the feeds, and then enriching the data with like threat intel data and stuff like that. So that's been the mission, I think, for the last couple of years. Now there is some stuff cooking in the background. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it yet. That's going to be really, really cool. That's coming out of Flare. But I also think the other thing is, like I alluded to earlier, right? Like there are plenty of C10 companies out there, right? And I wouldn't bullshit anyone, right? Like especially on the Red Team Village podcast, right? Like Flare really is the deepest entrenched in the kind of dark alleys of the dark web, and the Telegram channels, and their team is one of the best when it comes to surfacing, like a percentile of creds I have never seen, even when I've baked off other CTEM companies. So,
Hmm.
usually it feels like somewhere between like a 10 and 15 percentile, like, difference between the data that Flare can get at and the data that other people get at. So they really do focus in on one place, and try to make that, like, kind of their really, really good bread and butter. So Yeah, so that's why I respect, the researchers at Flare so much, and why I work with them and stuff like that. But like this problem of mass campaigns of phishers or mass campaigns of drive-by download, like bad guys, like, and then them collecting all these credentials in mass, it's not going to go away anytime soon, right? And when you look at the root cause of, someone being infected with Stealer malware, um,
Hmm.
it's really funny because it remains the same year over year. It's like people trying to download cracks for games, people trying to download movies, like double clicking on an executable from like, thinking it's a web extension. Like,
Hmm.
it is just human error, or, and sometimes human greed, and so I don't think it's ever going to go away, right? I think that the human condition of downloading malware, is interesting. I saw a crazy tweet the other day by some tech luminary, and he was like, "Hey, when's the last time that you got a computer virus? Why do we even need security?" And I'm like, "Dude, like." There are like millions of machines infected right now. It's just viruses don't no longer like pop up like a pop up with a skull on your desktop, right? Like they're just silently stealing your credentials out of your browser and selling them, right? You don't even know you have Stealer malware. And I just thought it was so ignorant of this tech guy who made this tweet. I was like, oh man, you don't even know. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. I was recording a podcast yesterday, by the way, and the guy asked me about the identity. So when they starting with the protecting identity, and I said, actually, identity always there. Like as you said, so to infect the machine, the virus basically need to be clicked by the user, and the user need to have the identity. They need to have the permissions. They need to have the rule part of the group. So it's about identity. And if you have any secrets or tokens, so it's about the machine identity. It's no human identity, but it's everything is just identity. But we had this in the past, so
Yep.
actually, like misconfigurations is always there. And as you said, that's interesting. And obviously, in our conversation, it's clear for me that the Flare is involved in making impact in the industry. And so, how this is getting working for Flare, and what is the differentiator? What is the special sauce, let's say, that no one else has when you think about the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, I think it's the same thing that I mentioned before. It's just
Mm-hmm.
the freshness of data, the depth at which they permeate the dark web with their researchers, right? Like, um,
Cool.
I think that a lot of the features, yeah, that exposing the data to clients with their Flare platform for like auto remediation is cool. Um, I wish I think like there's some stuff in ideation that's going to be probably like a quarter three, quarter four release, which I wish I could talk about. I can't right now, but just like as an industry in general, when you were talking about identity a couple seconds ago, like we're still catching up in a lot of places, right? Like I talk to a wide range of CISOs, right? Because I'm a field CISO
Mm-hmm.
and I'm a red teamer. So I like wear these two hats. And when I talk to like the technical people and some of the CISOs at big companies who are well funded, they're like, well, this isn't a problem anymore. Like creds being leaked is not like a problem anymore because we have two factor and we have all the bells and whistles turned on in the Microsoft suite. We have impossible travel, we have like geofencing, like all this stuff, right? Like browser profiles, bot protection, all this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, so this isn't an issue. And it may not be an issue for like a Fortune 100 bank, right? But for the rest of the world, they're still catching up to just implementing two-factor authentication, which still leaves two-thirds of the problem open, which is like when modern pen testers use evil jinx to capture a cred, they're actually not capturing the cred. They're letting the authentication go through. They're mostly looking for the cookie, right? And once we get the cookie and we can VPN from like kind of a geofence location that where the client's supposed to be logging into that is believable, then you can just insert the cookie into the browser and log in the Microsoft suite if they don't have all the bells and whistles turned on, right? And so um like I think like a lot of people are like, oh, two-factor authentication will save us. And it's like, the bad guys have mostly shifted to cookie stealing at this point. Which you get your cookie and your authentication cookie after you authenticate. It verifies that you have completed the identity handshake, and now you have
Mm-hmm.
this piece of data that says, Jason is Jason, right? To the web apps. And so, there definitely are defenses against, stealing the cookies and like I said, browser profiling. There's impossible travel if you flub that, if you try to log in from like somewhere that they shouldn't have been able to get to or whatever. But there are definitely red team tactics to get around those, like VPNing from the local area of the employee, and then logging in from a browser profile that's fresh, because usually that's a configuration that they'll allow. A lot of the forward facing places, they're like, oh yeah, we detect all this stuff, but the rest of the people in the world, the other millions of businesses in the world that are not in the Fortune 100, are still catching up. And so, when we do pen tests or red teams on those companies, whether we get it through a fish or whether we buy the cookie from the dark web or we get it through the
Hmm.
Stealer pack, those work, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and usually in probably you understand the part of the any podcast or any conversation nowadays that people are asking about the AI, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is asking about the AI. So how the Flare, or in your experience, leveraging the AI within the red team operations.
Yeah.
So what is the some capabilities maybe or innovation that set the approach apart from the others in the industry, as you
Yeah.
see in the for the player perspective or even in your experience?
Yeah, so yeah, when you look at security products just in general across the board, most of them are trying to figure out what to do with AI to like make their products better. I think that in specific, any type of threat intelligence data or exposure data, that comes from the dark web, has a very applicable kind of use case for AI, which is enrichment, right? So when you work in blue teaming or you work in threat intelligence, you have tactics and IOCs, and sometimes they come
Mm-hmm.
in a silo. It's just like this IP is bad, or like this credential was leaked, right? But there's not much of an explanation as to like where that came from, where the leak happened, what kind of malware was it. Like there's a whole chain of narrative information that can be really useful, and that is kind of what Flare is working towards right now with their features that they currently have and they're working towards, is to enrich the CTEM data with all kinds of other threat intelligence data, which makes for a more fuller package of understanding, like, well, how did this happen to this employee? Like, not just it happened, but how did it happen? What are mitigation steps that we could take to make sure this doesn't happen again? Defensive, like strategic recommendations. And so AI is really good at that because it can take a large corpus of data, apply rubrics, apply ratings, apply defensive advice that's templated or non-templated, and it can come up with that and enrich all of the threat intel data. And so for blue teams in general, not just Flare, I mean, the opportunity to enrich threat intel data with AI, pulling together multiple data sources like multiple log sources, multiple threat
Mm-hmm.
feeds, multiple exposures, it is a game changer. And it's mostly what most blue teams are working towards right now. Is the first system they're looking to augment with AI is like their enrichment systems.
And of course, the AI as working. I'm not saying like is a new thing or new technology. I think is AI is quite like almost past because it started like a few years or 1 or 2 years ago
Yeah.
actually. And so what is the opportunity or challenge that you see for the red team practice, especially regarding the automation, detection, evasion, or even the like privacy or ethical like consideration or something like this? What is the that's, I think, a big challenge like for the technical user. Okay, we know that the AI works, but like for the no technical guys, I mean, in this case financial people or even the talent acquisition people, those guys. So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the first part of the question, I mean, all of my reconnaissance workflow is AI aided now. All of my attack string generation for web testing is AI aided now. Like I have woven AI into everything. Now, that doesn't mean AI automates everything, right? Like that's the dream of everybody, is like, oh, push button, receive pen test or receive red team, right? Like that's not happening, right? Other than a few
Hmm.
very small microcosms of the world, right? Like, the AI XCC competition at DEF CON, there's definitely some pretty autonomous systems in that competition. And that's like the forward facing cutting edge researchers there. But for the rest of us, we're just AI aiding our already built workflows. Like things like we used to do with password permutations we used to do with Hashcat and John the Ripper and stuff like that, permutating a list of known passwords with different rules. You can do that with AI, right? You can take fuzz strings that you either did via like a binary harness to do like, fuzzing on a binary, or web fuzzing, and you can build mutations on fuzz strings with AI. You can use AI in workflows where it used to require a human's kind of brain. So like in an example in reconnaissance, right? Like there's definitely a bunch of things where I used to have to like look at a list of information and just intuit using my brain, like, okay, this is my target or this isn't my target, right? Acquisitions, reverse DNS is really noisy, like a whole bunch of reconnaissance methods. And now with AI, I can offload those workloads to make like decisions to the AI sometimes. And then like, yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of use cases in the offensive security field for UI. I mean, like, I think one of the things
Yeah.
I teach in one of my classes is you can go to some of the repos on GitHub for the anti-malware service bypasses that have occurred over the past 5 years. And you can just take that PowerShell code and tell ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and be like, rewrite this for clarity, or obfuscate this, or change the function names or whatever. Just tell ChatGPT to rewrite it somehow. And some of those antivirus and EDR checks for the anti-malware service bypasses are so brittle, they're so regex based, that if you ask ChatGPT to do that, it will instantly like get like 0 detected out of 72 on like virus total, right? And so like then you have what's old is new, as far as like a portion of your initial access like chain. So there's just like a bunch of really cool ways to use AI. On the blue
Mhm.
team side, uh, I actually think that blue teamers can gain more out of current Gen AI than red teamers can. Um, I think that a lot of the problems in blue teaming in defense stem from not pulling together multiple data sources and not
Mhm.
having like full coverage of solutions and things like that, and identifying connections between different security teams. And I think that AI is great at that. AI is really great at conglomerating a lot of information, finding blind spots when you ask it to, gluing together systems. And
Yeah.
so, I think that blue teams will gain a lot over the next couple years too from getting AI. But, you and I've seen you talk about some AI topics as well on your own. And, you and I forget that we are, as security people and having been exposed to it, we're still pretty much at the cutting edge, right? When I go
Yeah.
to clients, like their exposure to AI is much lower than you would think, right? Like we are very much still at the beginning of this journey. Like, you were saying, oh, generative AI is old now. So you go to just like a Fortune 200 company, even still some of the Fortune 100 companies, they're still, it's like AI is brand new to them, right? Like they are not, you and I forget how close we are to the topic. And so especially using AI not just for
Mhm.
feature development in platforms, but for security. It's brand new to them. So I definitely have that problem. I assume everybody's like up to date like me, and it's not the case.
Yeah, and I like when you mentioned something about the blue team. Like, okay, we
Yeah,
are red, we are a red teamer, and of course, I think the one of the advantage that red teamers has, because they know more about programming language, how they
yeah.
can script the things. On the
Hmm.
other hand, you have the blue teamer. They usually the guys is just driving tools like the firewall, IPS, or something like this.
Yeah,
So when they have the AI to help them to create those integrations, or like create new possibilities to check the logs on a kind of CM, or like improving their secure operations center, definitely, or how they can do kind of mix with using the IOCs or creating the way, and that's kind of very interesting, and I agree totally with you.
yeah.
And yes, that's so nice. So basically, in any words that you'd like to share with the red teamers out there, So what they want to suggest to you, like, or advise the guys, especially
Yeah.
if they are interested in the flare. Like I was seeing the website, very seem many things interesting about the training platform, and I like it a lot. And one of my talks is about the graphs, and I saw the Telegram graphs, and I really like it. So any advice on anything about the red teams out there?
Yeah, a couple things. So, yeah, so definitely drop by Flare for the Flare Academy sessions. So the Flare Academy sessions is a new thing we've been doing for the last year. It is run by our stellar team. Organizing it is not a non-trivial thing, but they get world-class malware people, red team people to do 1 to 2 hour workshops absolutely for free on these related topics and some deep technical stuff too, right? Like Flare is not exposing high level like webinar, like haha stuff, right? Like these are really technical webinars. Um, so drop by the Flare Academy, register, check it out. As far as if you're on a red team or a pen test team, right? Like, and you haven't graduated yet to including exposure data somehow in your methodology or in your reporting for your client, it's a little bit of a disservice. I would say look into doing that. I'm not forcing anybody to use Flare. Do your due diligence, but definitely check Flare out. Right, I use them, and then I ended up working with them part time, so they're that good. And then as far as like the red team stuff, I am like a tertiary member of the board with you on the Red Team Village. And I have gotten a sneak peek at the schedule and the speakers and the content for this year, and the Red Team Village talks and the also the drop by like workshops, like the tactics are going to be awesome this year. You can roll through the Red Team Village room, and there are going to be these tactic booths set up where like someone like
Hmm.
me or someone else will teach you like a single thing, like how to evade EDR, for this one EDR, and it's like a 15-minute session. It's very similar to Black Hat Arsenal, and
Yeah.
it is going to be fantastic. So there's just an amazing amount of awesome content ready at the Red Team Village this year. So you definitely should drop by the Red Team Village. Yeah, and other than that, if you're on this journey of vulnerability assessment person to pen test person to red teaming, one thing I was talking to one of my mentees yesterday. He's in the pen test stage, and it is a lot to learn to move through this journey. It doesn't need to you don't need to do it all in one day, right? Like there's a lot to learn. There's a lot
Journey,
of
journey,
it's a
journey.
journey. Yeah. You don't need to be prepared tomorrow to lead a campaign. Just take
Yeah.
it one step at a time. So and there's a ton of resources out there now more than ever. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree definitely. So we are participating at the Red Team Village. I will do a workshop there, and I will do a talk at Arsenal Village at Black Hat. Actually, I will
Nice.
present there this year again, and definitely I agree with you, all those advice with the people. And I like to tell about the journey, because I receive many questions about that, and always my answer is about respect the journey, because it's necessary. You don't need to do anything tomorrow. You need to respect the journey. That's
Yeah.
cool, Jason. And final words, like how the people can find you, on like the Hacker Summer Camp or social medias, whatever. Any final words that you would like to share with the guys, with the
Yeah,
people?
so I will be all over Hacker Summer Camp. So I will be landing on Monday night, and then Black Hat has two pre-shows. So I'm on the Black Hat review board. I review the talks for Black Hat, and then they do two summits before the two official Black Hat days. I will be involved in both the CISO summit and the AI summit in some portion. And then I will be at Black Hat doing an AI workshop on the expo floor. So, the floor where you get all the swag from the vendors. We have a carved out place there with Protect AI. And we're going to be doing a training there on intro to prompt injection. So it is like baby's first
Cool.
exposure to, hacking chatbots with prompt injection.
Mhm.
And then I am keynoting the Bug Bounty Village as well for their thing, and I have like three other talks in the work. I don't know. I'll be all over the place of DEF CON and Black Hat. I will
No,
do
this
a
works. I really
Yeah,
know how
yeah.
this works.
Yeah. So just look out. You can find me on Twitter or X at jhaddix, JHADDIX, and I will be posting there like a little graphic showing like everywhere I'll be. We will also have a bunch of swag. So we have our own custom badges this year from my company, Arcanum, t-shirts, stickers, all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, if you see me around, yeah.
Remember me?
Okay, I will. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
That's cool. Actually the only problem when we do this kind of conversation that we need to finish the conversation. That's the
Yeah,
problem
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's so awesome.
yeah.
And Jay, so again, thank you so much for your time, and Flair for supporting our village, supporting our community. We are here because of you guys. It's so special for us, and we are here because of you. So thank you so much again, and we hope you soon on the Hacker Summer Camp. See
See you
you.
guys
Bye
soon.
bye.